Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MR Podcast. The MR Podcast is available on all mainstream radio platforms. If you aren't already, please subscribe, follow our podcast so you can listen to it on any mainstream platform. Do you ever think about how the world needs more people with a mentor mentality? People of all kinds and backgrounds that are willing to care unselfishly about other people, support people, teach people, and serve people. Well, the truth is, as human beings, we all have a potential and purpose that matters. That potential and purpose extends to our relationships with other human beings. As the founder of Mentorship Revolution, I believe that being a mentor is not just a career, but in actuality, it is a person that is willing to make intentional choices, sacrifices, and contribute to the world and environment through intentional actions and living. Once we learn as human beings to nurture and encourage the purpose we have as individuals, we begin to understand that we can do the same for others. We can help others do the same. This is mentorship. I hope in today's podcast you are inspired, informed, and led to think from higher perspectives. On this podcast, we produce content from various angles, but the mission is continuous. On today's podcast, we have our wonderful guest, and Liam Naden. Can you actually introduce yourself, Liam?
Hi, Hannah. Thank you very much for having me on your show. Yes, my name's Liam Naden. I'm a coach, a speaker, a teacher, and a researcher into success and how really we can all make the most of our lives by learning how to use our brain the right way.
Yes. And we actually have a good podcast today with Liam. He is going to share his story and how his story is an example of using your brain to overcome some of life's very hard situations and how we can all use our brain. And we all have that potential to do the same. And I hope that you, the listener today, will enjoy today's podcast. And before we begin, I will share a few announcements. Are you interested in virtual tutoring? Potentially even your child being a part of a virtual tutoring group? The summer is right around the corner, and Mentorship Revolution would love to have your child or teenager be a part of our summer learning experience. There will be in-person and virtual extensions of this program. And if you are interested, please contact us at mentorship24.7@gmail.com. The MR question column is returning, and please follow us at mentorshiprevolution.com, and you will definitely be able to have access to that very soon. I am very active on our website, so I keep everyone updated. And last but not least, please make sure you are following us on all of our social media platforms. I am very excited, and thank you all that have been supporting us since day one. So in today's podcast, Liam, we're going to be focusing on your story too as well. So Liam, in your 40s, I know you wanted to speak about how at that age you kind of had a crisis, maybe if you wanted to describe it, and how can you share with us how that happened and how that situation went? What were the events that unfolded, and eventually like what you learned from that happening in your 40s?
Sure, will do. Well, basically what happened to me was after a lifetime of studying everything I could about how to be successful, both in business and in my personal life, and becoming really what I thought was in control of my life and an expert on success. After learning all of that, something happened that should never have happened if I truly did know the secrets of success, and that is that I lost everything and I became homeless. And it was really through a series of bad decisions that I made, both personally and in business. But I ended up with absolutely nothing, and I had to move in and sleep on the couch in my elderly mother's small apartment. So what was really strange about that whole experience, as I say, was I said to myself, why is this happening to me? Because I've studied everything that I can think of: personal development, spirituality, religion, motivation, business, all of the things I could about all of the strategies and techniques to achieve success in your life. And I certainly had achieved some success, but somehow another force took over and something else happened. And even though I can see that it was bad decisions that contributed to it, for some reason I did lose everything. But what happened after that was very interesting because what it forced me to do was really take a completely different approach to my life. And what I found was that after a few months of, going through the unraveling and getting through it all, things started to get better, and things started to get a lot better. And in fact, my life after that was much more successful than it had been before. But more importantly, as well as the success, I felt a lot better. I had a lot fewer problems. I didn't have the stress that I'd had in my earlier life. I had a much better relationship than I'd ever had. I had more business opportunities, and I was really doing all of the things that I'd wanted to do, but never really had the opportunity because I was always so busy and with stress and problems. So that got me to thinking, what's different about my life now? What am I doing differently? Because I thought I had all the answers. And that really led me by uncovering the clues, that led me to discovering that actually central to what the results we get in our life, both good and bad, is this thing we carry between our ears that we don't know very much about, called our brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that our brain is the most powerful machine in the universe by a long, long way, each individual brain. And yet, and it has the power to give you everything that you really want in your life without struggle and without stress.
Mm.
But none of us have been taught how to use it the right way. We're taught how to drive a car, we're taught how to ride a bike, we're taught how to operate a computer or any other machine. But the most powerful machine that exists, no one's ever taught us how to use it properly. And like any other machine, if you use it the wrong way, what's going to happen? You're going to have problems. And you would say that if your computer didn't run right, or if your car didn't run right, or if your bike wasn't operating right, you wouldn't say that there was something wrong with that. You would say that you'd been using it the wrong way. That's why you have a problem with a machine. And it's the same with your brain. And it turns out that if you have problems in your life, all they really are is a sign that you're using the machine of your brain the wrong way. So when I started to discover all of this and really put it all together and share it with other people, I noticed the results I was getting were so much better, but also I was able to help other people to understand how to use their brain the right way, and they were getting great results. And I still coach people now who get great results by really understanding what their brain is and how to use it the right way.
Wow, that's really a lot. So, okay, so I think there's some things here. So it was your 40s, so like you had never been homeless before your 40s?
No, and in fact, I went from being a very successful entrepreneur and businessman with multiple homes, multiple businesses, and that had been my life experience, really, was building successful businesses and doing well financially. So yeah, it was quite a shock to end up with nothing, literally more than the clothes on my back. And one of the worst things at the time, because I lost all my friends, my businesses, the worst thing was I had no clue on what to do. I had no prospects. I had nobody I could turn to, apart from my mother, but I had nobody I could turn to and to help me out. I'd lost all my friends and people I knew. So that's a really bad, or not a good place to be in, when not only you're having difficulty with your situation, but you can't see a way out of it. But as it turns out, that's often the turning point in a person's life, and it certainly was for me. And took me a while to figure out what the turning point actually meant and what was going on in my brain at the time. But that became the linchpin, or the key understanding to knowing how the brain actually functions properly.
Okay, um, so there's some things that I definitely want us to, discuss and go farther into as far as the details. Um, okay, so I'm thinking where to start first. So like I think it's really interesting how the 40s is like where the timeline is starting. We didn't really, I think you did share about in your 20s, which I'm in my 20s now. So I know that your 20s are very, significant years, right, to building your legacy, building your wealth, building your success in life and college and career and all of those exciting things in your 20s. But in your 40s, you kind of had your meltdown. So you just completely lost everything. And I know that you said yes, you confirmed that, but I think it's interesting. Can you share with us? Because I know it didn't happen suddenly, like like the Great Depression or something. So, like, can you share with us the signs you noticed, the symptoms, what was happening, maybe that bad decision you made the year or two before everything just crashed? Can you share with us? Because I think that's very important for us to like know how that can happen to someone.
Yeah, well, I think the warning signs for something like that, and certainly for me, started a lot earlier. And the problem, if you like, with being in your 20s and in your 30s and 40s and 50s, or whatever age, the problem is that you lack a certain perspective on your life. And the reason that you lack perspective on your life is because you have stress and because you're pushing hard and you're trying to achieve. And what happens when you're stressed is, and this is and we can get into some detail as to how this works, but you make the wrong decisions when you're stressed. So what you tend to do, and the younger you are, and I know this was for me, I kept thinking, I'm not sure if this is the right decision, but I'm so determined to be successful and to have the best. I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to make it happen. And we hear this all the time: make it happen, overcome your struggles, overcome your challenges, and go for it. And I think we've built up this image in society that struggle and overcoming challenges are what it's all about. But what tends to happen for most people, certainly most people who are striving success, is you tend to make the wrong decisions because you're trying to be optimistic and look at the positive side and believe that any problems that you encounter, you will overcome. This often happens in a relationship or in a marriage, and I do a lot of marriage and relationship coaching, and I particularly help people who are facing a real crisis in their marriage. And again, it's like my situation. You could say, well, what happened in the months leading up to it, but often it's in the years leading up to it,
Right.
and often it leads right back to the very beginning. Did they make the right decision in the first place? And that's where you've really got to focus all of the time. And when you use your brain the right way, you make much better decisions. When you use your brain the wrong way, you tend to be impulsive and tend to overlook things and just say to yourself subconsciously, oh, well, everything will work out fine. I'll make it happen. It'll be good. So often in a relationship, people have these niggling doubts, about whether this person is right for them or not. And then they shut those doubts out, those gut feelings, if you like. And they decide to go for it in a relationship. And it's often based on a fear they have that maybe that, this person's good enough and maybe they wouldn't find anyone else any better, or they're getting a bit old or whatever. Or they've been together with this person for a while and they've already committed to them, so that they want to see it through. But what you have to think about is whatever decision you make, you have to listen to yourself and say, is there a little niggly part of me inside that's saying, hang on a moment, this might not be the right decision to make? And if you don't listen to that voice, you're going to make decisions that can have a big impact on your life and can show up in problems 20 years later or 10 years later. So this is where understanding how your brain works and how your brain is designed to make sure you make the right decisions is it's almost like it's a prevention rather than a cure, and it's much easier. And this is what I tend to do in my coaching, rather than pick people up at the bottom of the cliff as the ambulance. I'd much rather that, and people I'm sure would agree, it's much better not to make the wrong decision in the first place than to make the wrong decision and then try and fix it. And the problem with most people is most people spend most of their life trying to fix problems based on decisions that they never should have made in the first place. They marry the wrong person, or they get the wrong job, or they make bad business decisions, they employ the wrong people, or they make a decision to open or set up a part of their business that doesn't work. And then they spend all their time trying to fix things. And I'm sure we can relate to this when it comes to relationships, that when you have problems in a relationship, you spend all your time trying to fix the problem. Whereas maybe, and it's not always the case, but maybe that relationship, there's a different way to look at it. Maybe it's not right for you anymore. Maybe it was never right for you. Maybe it's only fear that's keeping you in that relationship. So these are all important things to say. And I don't think that, people's, or should I say, what tends to happen, or what happened to me, is really all of my bad decisions and all of my pushing and struggling and avoiding, avoiding things, and the wrong decisions I made, they all caught up with me. And that's a good thing, because it taught me the lessons of, you can't just sort of bluff your way through life and hope that that you can, with enough determination and motivation, you can fix anything, because that's just not the way you're supposed to live.
Yes. Okay. Well, we thank you so much, Liam, for sharing about your story regarding homelessness. And because some people actually have worse situations where they don't have any family. Do you have any advice for someone whose support system is lacking, or may not even be existent, or someone who they may become homeless due to trauma, or due to mental health issues, or due to maybe they didn't have education, maybe they didn't have career success, and they are just trying to make ends meet, like you've shared with us about the brain. So what would your advice be to someone who found themselves in dire situations such as that, with no support system, or they just want to give up? What's your advice?
Right. Well, I think the thing to realize, and I certainly realized, if people say to me, oh, it must have been terrible, must have been incredibly traumatic, and you must look back on being homeless as, an awful time, and it must have scarred you for life. And, how could you pick yourself up, and how can you function now, having, you must be having to do a lot of processing of that trauma. But here's the thing, the way I view it now as to what happened to me, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And if you read the stories of many people, well-known people who've been through incredible trauma in their life, whether it be abuse or homelessness or losing everything or whatever, many of them will say that that was the best thing that ever happened to them. And the reason for that is what you learn and gain from the experience that you would never be able to learn or gain if you hadn't been through it. I wouldn't be able to have the awareness of how the brain works and be able to help other people to understand and improve their life if I hadn't been through that experience myself. So I think if you're going through a really difficult patch, for a start, realize that nothing is forever. But instead of asking yourself, why is this happening to me? Ask yourself a better question, which is, why is this happening for me? Why is this happening for me? What are the benefits here? What can I, what is good about this? And when you do that, you switch the way your brain is operating, and your brain starts to see possibilities and opportunities. Because if you just sit there and say, well, my life's terrible and there's nothing I can do about it, and it's just the way it is, all your life is really your awareness and your perception and the way you see things. And the way you see things is determined by how you're using your brain. So if you use your brain in a more empowering way, a more creative way, then your brain will start to show you opportunities and new ideas, new ways of looking at it. And that's exactly what happened to me. I thought there was no hope for me, but when I started to think, why is this happening? What's good about this? What's there's some lesson here I've got to learn, which is why this is happening to me, which is really going to help me in later life, or help me to move forward in a much better way. And when I started to do that, I did start to see opportunities. I did start to see ways out of the situation, because my brain was now looking for opportunities. It wasn't just looking at excuses for why I was in the bad situation I was in. And again, remember I said at the beginning, the brain is the most powerful machine that exists. It has the power to find you opportunities. It has the power to get you out of your situation. But you need to use it in the right way and allow it to do that. And if you're just continually blocking its ability to see things, well, all you're going to see is negativity and hopelessness.
Right, absolutely. And, so what would you say, Liam, like on your way, when did you when did you have that that aha moment where it was like, this is what I've been missing the whole time? This has been the cause of all of these things that have led to the downfall that you were experiencing at that time. When did you have that aha moment where you realized what it may have been that you were doing? Because again, accountability for your actions and not feeling just sad and depressed or, just depleted, but more so beginning to realize that you were regaining your power. What was that? When did you have that moment, and how long had you been in your situation of homelessness, staying with your mom?
Well, I don't think it was any one specific moment, but it was a gradual awareness that I was operating in a different way. And the way I was operating differently was that instead of trying to figure out what to do and struggle and say, well, I'm in this situation, what can I do to get out of it? Instead of being stressed and worried and upset and angry and all of those things, I actually just gave up. And I said, I don't know the answer. I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know why it's happening. And I'm just sick of trying and being stressed. I just give up. I don't care anymore. Now, something really interesting happens when you give up like that, is that you actually release your brain's power to do its job. Because the biggest problem nearly everybody has in life is they think that they create their life by thinking about it, by working on it, by setting goals, by planning, by all of these things. But all of those activities come from a very small, or not a small, but a particular part of your brain, which is very limited, which is the thinking part of your brain. There are actually 4 distinct parts to the brain. And the thinking part contains all the information from all your experiences. So if you try to use that part of your brain to figure anything out, all it can do is search through the database of the information that it's already got in there, that you've stored up from your own personal experience. But it's not the part that has the access to an infinite amount of information. That's a different part of your brain. So instead of trying to figure it out, what you need to do is you need to harness this other part of your brain, this creative part of your brain, I call it, that does know how to find the right answers to things. So instead of getting stressed and really pushing and working hard, you allow this part of your brain to operate. And that's when you get into new ideas. That's when your creativity is able to be used, or your imagination. And people often, you've probably had this experience, you suddenly come up with an idea that you've never had before, or you see things in a different way that you've never seen before, and it makes a lot more sense in a situation. Maybe you're dealing with a problem, and then you stop thinking about it, and all of a sudden you come up with an idea as to how you can fix it. So all of these things come from a different part of our brain. and they're not our thinking part. And this is the biggest stumbling block that we've created in society by teaching people or leading them to believe that you can figure stuff out, and you need to plan and set goals and all of those things. But that's not the way your life works in reality. There's another part of you that's much more powerful, which already knows what you want. It knows how to get you what you want. It knows how to make sure you do the right things and stop doing the wrong things. You just need to know how to access that part. So that's what happened to me. I realized that's what I was doing. I'd given up on trying to think about it and trying to figure it out, on trying to be motivated and pushing, because the harder I pushed in that situation, the worse it seemed to make things. So, but I just thought, I'll just give up. Everything I've tried hasn't worked. I've done all of these great success techniques over the years. None of them work. I give up. And then I realized later that's what I'd done, is I'd allowed this creative part of my brain to bring the answers to me. And that's what happened. And that brings, different sort of people into your life, different situations, things that you go, wow, that's a coincidence, or that's really unusual. How did that happen? That's all that part of your brain at work. And really, that's the way we're designed to operate. We're not designed to walk around as a stress machine trying to figure stuff out using the limited amount of information that we've gathered in our life. We're designed to tap into the infinite database of information, if you like, that exists, that already knows how to solve any problem we might have, and it knows how to make sure we don't have problems.
Okay. Well, I know you all agree. Liam has really gave us a good amount of information about the brain, and I think that we want to give you all like a summary analysis of it. So really what I'm taking away, Liam, is that number one, stress is not the key. I actually think with me mentioning stress, how would you define stress and what are the symptoms of stress?
Well, stress is a signal from your brain telling you that you're facing a danger or a threat to your survival. And what happens on a physical level is, here's in summary, this is how it works. Okay, and I teach this, I have a podcast as well about this, and I have coaching programs about it. But this is how your brain actually works, is that it takes in information through your senses and it makes a decision. So that's from your thinking brain. Then your emotional brain, the second part, it makes a decision about whether that information means your environment, in other words, where you are right in that moment, whether it's safe or dangerous. And if it says everything's safe, all good to go, then you go into the flow in your natural creative state, and that part of your brain sends out messengers or neurotransmitters that make you feel good. You feel happy, grateful, loving, and you're in the flow of your life. But if the brain says, no, something here is dangerous, if it interprets it as dangerous, what it does is it activates something called the sympathetic nervous system. And that's sometimes called the fight or flight mechanism. And what that is, that's a response to danger. And that's what causes the stress in your life, is your brain telling you that there's something to be afraid of. Now, there's two problems with that. One is, when that part of your brain is activated, it shuts down your ability to be creative, to have insight, intuition, higher awareness, to be able to solve problems effectively. It actually shuts that down, and it turns you into this reactive person who just reacts to things. And that's what it's designed to do if you're facing an immediate danger. It's designed to get you to jump out of the way of the train coming at you, or react if the lion's chasing, jumps out of the bushes at you, if you like. That's what it's designed for. But if you're using that all the time, if you're feeling stressed all the time, then your brain is continually in a reactive state. You don't have the full awareness of your situation. You can't see that what you might be doing is the wrong thing, and you can't see the right things to do. So that's why you've got the number one name of the game is to avoid stress, avoid fear, to realize, and there's certain ways of doing this, but to realize that what your brain is telling you is dangerous is not a danger at all, because most people, we live in the best time in history. What's there to be afraid of?
Yeah.
Nothing, apart from what your brain is telling you, because you're feeding it with all this negativity that's on the television and the news and what other people are saying, and all of these beliefs about it all has to be hard and you have to struggle, and everything's dangerous. So you're living in the state where you don't have the awareness to realize that none of that is true, that all of these things are just not true. And you don't have the ability to access the part of your brain that can make you see that none of it's true, and can make sure, as I said earlier, that you live your ideal life. Because that's what your brain, as an infinite machine, that's its purpose, is to make sure you're your happiest, healthiest, and strongest and your best. That's your biological purpose. That's the brain's biological survival purpose, is to make you the best you can be. And the only way you can do that is by allowing it to do its job. And when you interfere by introducing stress and fear, by somehow connecting your brain to things that aren't dangerous, but you've told your brain they are dangerous, then you shut all that ability off. And that's why people struggle, and that's why people have problems, because their brain isn't able to deal with your problems and create the life for you when you're in this stress state.
And okay, so to be devil's advocate, it seems like, Liam, you really go by the psychology of, the brain and the mind is very powerful and it creates this reality, right? So what about, okay, so you spoke about being very reactive, and that's usually that fight or flight, and that's the stressors and all of those things and within the brain. But what if it is a reality where a person is threatened, or a person has a reason to be fearful? I understand you say it's going to kick in like automatic, just the way the body and the brain works. But what if a person, for example, is in an abusive situation, or maybe they're in a toxic situation, and can we really control our brains at those times?
Well, no, that's what the brain is perfectly designed for. When you're in a dangerous situation, it's designed to get you the things, it's designed to get you to do the things to get you out of that situation as quickly as possible. So it means to run, or to shout, or to fight back. But when you stay in that same situation, then you're not using the brain the right way, because you're not seeing the big picture. Because if you talk about abusive relationships, why do people stay in abusive relationships even though they're harmful?
Brain damage.
Because of fear.
Yeah.
They're afraid.
Yeah.
Because they think what it means if they were to leave would be more dangerous than if they were to stay. So they can't see the big picture about their situation, which is they should leave. They will find, even if they don't know anybody now, they will find support. This is what faith, your brain teaches you, and it's throughout religion as well. You've got to have faith, because you can never know exactly every step in your life journey consciously, but your brain actually knows every step in your life journey, because it's an infinitely powerful machine. It knows all of these things. So you have to, when you realize that, you can react to an immediate dangerous situation. But if it carries on, you've really got to say, well, my brain is telling me that I'm still in danger, when all that's really at play is a fear of the unknown. I'm still in the situation because I'm too afraid to leave it. So when you realize that, then you can take action and say, well, I am going to leave. I've talked to people in my marriage coaching who've been in very bad relationships for 30 years. And they're all stressed about it, and they've been trying for 30 years to fix it. But what their brain is not showing them is the answer is just to leave. They're never going to fix it. But fear won't allow them to leave. So there's a very big difference between an immediate threat to your survival. So if someone comes to hit you, you're going to react. You're going to fight back. You're going to shout. You're going to run. You're going to do whatever it takes to get you out of that situation there and then. And that's when your brain that's what that fear, fight or flight mechanism is designed to do, to make you do something instantly to get yourself out of a dangerous situation. But it's not designed to be used on a continual basis, because it shuts down your ability to really solve the bigger problem, which is, why are you in that relationship? Why are you in that job you don't like? Why are you persevering with something that you don't like? When, maybe, and one really good way to know this is true is, you might have a friend who can easily, and you might have this experience with a friend you have too, who's going through a bad situation, you can see very clearly what they should do to solve their problem, but they can't see it. So if they're in a toxic relationship, you say to them, leave, go find someone else. You'll be okay. Don't worry about it. Just get out of it. Or
Yes.
if you don't like your job, go find another one. What are you afraid of? And they can't see that. They're going, oh, no, I don't know. I can fix this. And, there's all these reasons. It's purely because their brain, when it's in an afraid state, can't allow them to see the right answer. So I'm not sure if that answers your question about the difference between using this fight or flight mechanism and the way, when it's appropriate and when it's not. But it's designed to be used in very short bursts when you're faced with an immediate threat. It's not designed to solve your bigger problems. That's your creative brain's job.
Yes. And, you all, as we begin to end today's podcast, we're nearing the end. Well, I know today's podcast was a lot of information to digest, and we hope that you enjoyed today's podcast and our wonderful guest, Liam. This was his first time on the MR podcast, so we hope that you enjoyed what he had to share with us about the brain. I think this is our first time discussing the brain in depth, so I know that you should, find this very informative. And also what we want to share is, seek help. That's something that I have been able to accept. And I've always been a very strong-willed, independent person, but sometimes you may find in life, despite your age and your background, that if you find yourself just struggling and you can just tell that you're not yourself, or things in your life, like Liam discussed today, you're having problems on every end, just find help. And I also suggest a lot of times what work is just getting by yourself and getting away from the noise and all of the distractions. And as Liam said, the answer is within you, and you'll be able to find the answers and the closure, and you'll see things go back to a much brighter place for you in your life. So we hope that you enjoyed today's podcast, Liam. We're going to get ready to end today's podcast. So I hope to see you all on the next episode. You all enjoy the rest of your Monday and have a great week. Bye.